Hey, it's me again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elke Feuer. I'm an author and a fiction book coach. So this topic is going to be about what to do for your year end, like a checklist of things that I recommend you do to wrap up your end of year as an author. So I basically have it broken into 4 categories: your books, your stories, digital, as well as learn. So I'm going to dive in and share what each one of those are and what I recommend that you do in each of those areas. So the first one is your books. Now, the difference between books and stories is books are books that are actually published and they're out, whereas your stories are just the ones that you're either still writing, but they're not launched, or they're not actual books. So with regards to your books, some of the things you want to look at is reviewing your keywords and categories. And I highly recommend doing that this year because Amazon is adding a bunch of new categories. So make sure that you check those out, categories and subcategories, because it's a great way to get more eyes on your book, especially if it's a new category that there's not as much competition. And it's a good way to get a high ranking, which gets more eyes on your books. So go ahead and check that out. I wish I could say that there was a list somewhere that you could go, but unfortunately it's only when you're inside KDP. So that is something that I recommend that you do every year, is to review those, your categories as well as your keywords, to see if you can tweak them, because that is really how people find your book. So it's really important to constantly work and tweak on those. So the next thing that I recommend looking at under your books is to review your book description. This is really important because I find that how they're laid out on Amazon, how it's structured, tends to change. There's always sort of a 3-part process, which is like the hook, the intro, and it depends on whether you have one point of view or 2 points of view. But usually it's your hook, your intro to your heroine, intro to your hero, and then sort of so that's 4 parts, sorry. And what's the thing that kind of the crescendo or the climax, I guess, of the story, and what the struggle that they're going to go through to make people think, oh, I want to know what's going on, what's going to happen. So it's always really important, I find, to update your book descriptions. I am completely overhauling mine this year, especially for my backlist. That's really important. And speaking of backlist, one thing that I also recommend is updating your metadata and your book matter, because what that is that, especially if you publish new books, because if you published, your first book and you're on book 5 and there's no links in your first book to direct readers to your next books, then you're missing out. So I think that's really important. That's another thing that I'm doing this year as well too, is adding all the new books that I've written to my backlist. Or to my back matter of my earlier books, to make sure that people are able to click on those. Now, I know some writers are doing different strategies where they're just having one link to one book rather than all of them. I think it's just whatever is going to work for you. You could try it as a different strategy. It's up to you, whatever you want to try. But either way, it's important that there's something there so that readers can click on as soon as they finish your book. The other thing is looking and analyzing your sales overall. This is something that I really recommend doing regularly, like at least once a month, because otherwise it's really easy to just say, oh, no sales, no sales, no sales, and we're not actually doing something about it. Guilty. So it's a good idea to get into that habit where you're checking your sales, what's working, what's not, any strategies that you use, your promotions that you do. Did you get sales? What's working, what's not, so you can double down on what's working. And you don't know that unless you look at your numbers. So that is really important. I learned that lesson the hard way last year. Let's just put it that way. And I'm making sure that I put really good strategies in place this year so that I don't make that same mistake. So I'm outlining what didn't I do, what am I going to do. So that's one thing that I recommend doing for your books. The other is looking at your website and making sure that all of your links for your books are working and that you have all your books on your website, because it's really easy to launch and then you forget, oh crap, I forgot to put it on my website. And just making sure that all of those things are working is really important. If you have the budget for it, you can look at, maybe not for a book that you just published a year ago, but maybe if the book is 3 years or more, you could look at redoing your covers, because a lot of times they change as far as what the audience are looking for or what attracts the audience for covers in different genres. So I would recommend, if, like I said, if you have the budget for it, is just to look and see what are the covers looking like in your genre, and if you want to, is to upgrade them. That's another great way to refresh your books. With your book description, one thing that you might want to look at that's really popular, and I know I've mentioned this in another video as well too, is looking at adding your book tropes as well as your hooks. And your hooks, I'm noticing that there's a lot of hooks that's just like a one-liner right at the top, and making sure that you're utilizing all that space and not leaving a lot of white space. So you're letting readers see as much about your books and your stories as possible that's going to grab them before you have to go to that click more, right? Because if you have a lot of space there, you're not grabbing them, then you can lose out on that. And then also adding your tropes, which is, what is your book about? And that is kind of, I know some writers are putting that in the description of their book, putting a lot, they're really trying new and interesting stuff. So I really recommend looking at the books in your genre and seeing what they're doing with their book descriptions, with their book titles, all of those things, to see how that you can be very clear to your readers what your book is about, and the type of books, like if it's a happily ever after, is it a friends to enemy, those kind of things really help to make the readers make a decision, and that's the type of books that they like to read. So if you don't have that on your books, I really highly recommend it. I'm completely redoing mine and adding those onto there as well. So that's it for your books. I'm sure that there might be other things that other authors do, but this is sort of my checklist that I do and that I recommend. Now, when it comes to your stories, what I recommend, and then these are sort of your stories, your ideas that are in process in whatever stage they're in, is to organize your, whether they're in a notebook or they're digital, because it's so easy to have things all over the place, and then you're looking for something. It's like, oh, I want to write that book, but where is that? Where's that? Where's that? And just carefully labeling. Like, I like to label my journals. I try to keep a journal with one story in it. I learned the hard way when I'm like flipping through 300-page journal trying to find that little bit that I did about a story that I'm writing. So I try to keep them all separate now. If not, you can use flags. I've done that, where I flag them and write the name of a title, something that'll trigger and say, oh, this is about this book or this story, just so that it's making it easy to find what you need. Now, digital wise with your stories, what I like to do is make sure that I create a folder, and then anything that I do, any Word documents, anything that I've done, as I create a folder, and it can be a working title, and then I move everything in there so that everything is in one folder, so that I know, okay, when I go in here, my character sketches are in there, all of my things that I like to use when I'm writing a book go in there, instead of just, oh, I've got some here on my desktop and some on Google Drive and some all over the place. I have, at the moment, all my books are on my hard drive, on my computer, but I have some of my author stuff and K-writer stuff is actually, I'm transitioning it to Google Drive, just so that it's a little bit more organized and everything is in one place, because a lot of the stuff I have to share it, and I can do that in Google Drive. OneDrive, everybody's different, whatever works for you. The other thing that I like to do is I like to identify what stories am I going to write in the following year. This helps on a lot of levels, and not that it doesn't change, because it does, but 99% of the time I like to say, okay, these are the books that I like to look through my books, my story ideas, and say, okay, where am I at with each one of these stories? How far along? And the ones that I've written the most on that maybe doesn't require a crap load of editing, those are books that I can edit and put out without a lot of mental and stress of trying to get it done. So that's how I kind of look at it. It might be that, hey, you wrote this book and then this is a continuance. It's just sort of, it's a good idea to get clear on what are the books that you want to write, what are the best books to write in the new year. So you kind of have a plan of what you want to do, rather than the new year starts and it's like, okay, what am I going to write? And you're losing that time that you could be writing the book because you've already figured it out which one you're going to write. So for the next thing is digital. This one is a big one. So I'm going to tackle and just go ahead and dive in. First thing I like to do is recommend is organizing your folders and just really cleaning and neating them up, because I know for me, when I was sort of moving stuff over from my hard drive to Google Drive, I realized that I had tons of ideas for stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot I created this, and I forgot I did this, and I forgot I did all that, because it was sort of all over the place. Whereas if it's organized and where it's supposed to be, then it makes it easy to be able to find it and actually use what you create, right? Because how many times I know that I created this great checklist with the intention to use it, used it once, and then it kind of got lost, and I thought, oh, it'd be great if I had a checklist that did this, and it's like, you do have a checklist that does that, right? So this is why it's really important to get organized, and that's one of the things that I am getting more diligent about this year. I'm good with certain things and other things not so much. So I've been doing it slowly, and it's something that I've set up the structure for it to make it easier for me to be able to do it consistently. The other thing, I kind of touched on your website with this one. With the first one with your books, it's a good idea to just focus on your books, making sure that all that's working. Under digital, what I recommend is looking at your website as a whole. And I did this because I hadn't really touched my website in about 5 years. And I went in, I'm like, oh my gosh, some of the stuff was so outdated, and some of the links weren't working anymore, and just, my bios kind of changed. So those kind of things are really important, because if readers are going there and looking and wanting to know more about you, and it's something that was there 5 years ago, they might be like, oh, they're not active. Why do I want to buy a book from a writer who's not even going to doesn't have a recent book out? So, or just if people want to find you to come and talk about something to do with your book, and there's no information on there, no current information. This is why I think it's important to look at your website, the wording, making sure that everything's up to date. Which brings me to your author bio. I think it's really important. I always recommend that you have a long one and a short one, and that you look at it and review it at least every other year. I know some writers who do it every year, especially if they're constantly making appearances or things like that, because for instance, let me give you an example. Like I'm doing a speaking or an online class that I'm hosting for a writing group in January and one in February. And they're like, oh, send me your bio and your photo. And I'm like looking at my bio, I'm like, oh my God, this thing is so old and so outdated, and I hadn't done it. So it's a good idea. And then I had to kind of redo it, refresh it. And then I always like to have like a longer one and a short one, because depending on what you're doing, this is good for podcasts, YouTube, because one of the first things they're going to ask you is to send an author bio so that they know how to introduce you. So that's why it's important to keep that up to date and refreshed as well too. For your digital, oh gosh, I am horrible about this, is keeping a spreadsheet and updating all of the courses and workshops and everything that you have signed up and purchased. Because let's face it, how many times have we bought something and then like totally forgot all about it and then bought something more than once? Guilty. Not realizing that I'd already had something similar or the exact same thing. So one of the things that I did, and I've created it, and I haven't been the best about keeping on top of it. And like I said, I just bought like 3 new things this month, so I need to go in and add those. And that's basically all the courses that you bought, and just sort of saying, the date that you bought them, what the course is about, the name of the course, who the instructor is. Because I find that a lot of times we'll be like, man, I wish I knew how to do this, and then you actually haven't. The other thing you could do is, that I'm working on, a course that I got, is how to organize the folders in your search. So like when you do Google and all that, you can do your favorites bars and all those things. And I have it semi-organized, but I was watching a video with this one lady in a planning workshop that I did, and the way that she had hers laid out and how she set up the foundation for it to make it easy to find what you need as well as organize it, poof, blew me away. So I'm like, I want to do that. So that's another thing that you can look at, is how can you organize and clean out your search area and your favorites bar and all of that things. Because how many times have we bought something and I try to put it on my favorites bar so that I remember and I see it there to log in, and then, or something that you found that was great information and you just kind of stuck it somewhere, but it's not really organized, or you've got all of these things but they're not put into, you know, categories. Like I have one for Elke Feuer, which is all my author stuff. I have some for K-writers, so I can just pull stuff in there. But there's other stuff that I haven't done that with. So this is some of the things that can help you on a personal as well as with your author life as well too. So that is something that I recommend, digital. One thing that I am getting diligent about this year is, for me, is my products and services. For you, it would be your books, and making sure that you keep all your scripts for your promotional, anything to do with your books, is really organizing it so that it's easy for you to find information that you need in order to do your promotions. Same with images. I know if you use Canva for promotional stuff, Canva allows you to create folders. I have folders for mine. I've recently had my VA ask her to sort of group things for each book in the folder, because before I just kind of had it sort of promotional, Elke Feuer versus for books versus other promotional stuff. But it can pile up and you're in there trying to search for stuff. So I've reorganized that, and I've had my VA do the images that she's created as well too. So that is a good way to do it. So it makes it easy for you to find stuff and share it. Because if it's taking a lot of time and effort for you to promote your books, it's going to be difficult to be consistent. And these are some of the things that, by doing these checklists, is going to help you to be more consistent in the new year. Clearing out your inbox. Oof, this is a tough one for me. Because I have like 3 or 4 different emails that I need for business, and I am constantly struggling with that, to be very honest with you. I think I have like 12,000 in one of my emails, and I'm trying to, Yahoo is coming up with some new features that I've been taking advantage of. But one of the things that I've been doing in one of my email inboxes that has made a huge difference, and that is when I see something come into my inbox that I know is great content, but it really doesn't apply to me anymore, and I'm really not connecting with that individual anymore and their content, unsubscribe right then and there. So that it at least keeps more emails from coming in your inbox, whereas you're gonna say, oh, I'm gonna go back in there and organize it. That never happens. So I just go in and immediately unsubscribe, because let's face it, even when you do that, it still takes a little while before it becomes unsubscribed. So that is my tip for you, to at least stop the massive amount of emails that are coming in your inbox. So, but keeping it clean, keeping it organized with folders, all of those things, especially for the important stuff. Because let's face it, some of it's just junk, but anything that's related to your books, appearances that you're gonna do, those kind of things, that's really important to be able to find that information. So I highly recommend cleaning out your inbox as well as setting up some kind of structure and system. One thing that I do as well too is I have what I call outreach scripts. And basically this is scripts that I use to, if I'm requesting an appearance on a YouTube or a podcast or something else, whatever it is. I like to keep a script so that I don't have to try to create something from scratch. If it's something I want to pitch a podcast, I go in and I look at the podcast. If it's usually one that I follow or that I listen to that I'd like to be on, and then I will pull the script, and I still have to tweak it. There's no getting away from that, but at least you're not trying to write one from scratch, because let's face it, if you have to do that, it's going to make it less likely that you're going to be able to, or that you're going to be like, oh my God, I have to write a whole script to pitch to them. I don't want to do that. And it never happens. And your outreach is really important, because it's a great way to connect with new audiences, new readers, and just get your face in front of other people. And like I said, as well as your book. So that's something that I like to do, and is just a recommendation. Now, the last one that's part of the checklist that I recommend is learn. And what this is identifying all the Not everything, because let's face it, I did that last year and that was a disaster. I wrote down everything that I wanted and needed to learn, and I had a whole page. And that was just so overwhelming that I think I maybe did 2 things off of that list. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing this year that I recommend is to just focus on the things that you want to excel in. Not the things that you want to learn or that you need to learn, because let's face it, that is an endless list. What are the things that you want to excel in? And this is something that was in a coaching call that I did this week. And one of the things that she said is, what is it with your author life that the main top things that you're going to focus on? Like if it's book sales, then maybe you need to learn about ads, whether that's Facebook ads, Amazon ads. Pick one, don't try to do them all. If it is that you want to reach a wider audience, maybe that's learning how to write, outreach scripts so that you really sell yourself, right? And you get connected with that individual so that, they're gonna read your script and say, wow, that's amazing. I gotta have this person on my podcast. So that is the way to approach it. And that's how I'm approaching it this year, because let's face it, I want to learn and know all the things, but that is not possible. And it can just create anxiety, like, oh my gosh, how do I choose which one? I need to do this. I have to do this. When the truth is, if we just focus on just those things that we want to excel in our writing life, then that is going to make it a whole lot easier. It has for me so far. I've been sort of doing it in the last quarter of the year, and it's made a huge difference because I see stuff all the time. I'm like, you know what? Nope, not going to do that. Not going to buy that. And then I've just been focusing on buying the things that I know that are gonna that I do wanna excel and that are gonna help improve my writing life or my personal life. There you have it. I hope that you found this checklist helpful. And like I said, if it is a lot, just pick and choose those ones that are gonna make the biggest impact for you. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to share what things that you're going to do to help you set yourself up for that you're going to finish off this year to set yourself up for a excellent 2024. So share with me in the comments. And then I want to also invite you to a 3-day free workshop that I'm hosting to help you plan your 2024 year. Now I'm going to focus on your personal life as well as writing. So during that time, you're going to map out your year. I'm going to also have you walk away with a 1-page yearly summary, which is basically going to help you to stay focused. It's 1 page, so you're not trying to see all the things. I know that this is something that I did new, and I'm looking forward to implementing it for myself next year. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Like and subscribe to the channel if you would like to learn more, and I will see you in the next video.